Okay, AP Psych friends, we are in our final video for Unit 7. We are finishing up Unit 7B with a discussion of language. And so, what is language? Language is just our spoken, written, or even signed words that we use as a means of communication. And language is made up of some different things. A phoneme is the smallest distinctive sound unit within a language. And so, in English, if you think of the vowels and all the sounds that the vowels make, or letters and the sounds that letters can make, and even letter combinations like CH, ch, as a phoneme. Um, those are the elements of our spoken word, of our language. Morphemes are going to be the smallest unit that conveys some sort of meaning. Um, Two things that come to mind that are both phonemes and morphemes are I, right? It can be the letter I, it can be a sound that a vowel makes, but I is also a word. S, implying plural, is also something that can be a phoneme and a morpheme at the same time. And then also think of prefixes like un or ed at the end of a word. Can convey past tense. Those are things that are morphemes. So you put morphemes and phonemes together and you get words. Okay? Grammar is going to be our set of rules that kind of enable us to communicate and understand each other. Now, grammar can include a couple of things. Semantics are the rules that drive the meaning from these morphemes, these words, and these sentences, right? So when you study semantics, you're studying the meaning behind sentences that are spoken. And when you look at syntax, you are looking at the rules for combining words together into grammatically correct sentences. And so, concerning communication of ideas, semantics and syntax are important in conveying what it is you are thinking. And how did all of this happen in all of us? How did we learn to speak a language? Any of you that are involved in a foreign language are experiencing this for the second time in your life. But it begins with receptive language, the ability to comprehend speech. And so, for the beginning months of an infant's life are spent just observing um, mouths of people and the shapes that they make when the sounds come out and listening to those sounds. There comes a point where we will then try to repeat those sounds ourselves. And when we start actually saying the things or making the sounds and making the words, we call that productive language. So, any of you that are in a foreign language probably understand that it is a lot easier to understand somebody speaking to you than it is to speak the language yourself, right? So receptive language comes before productive language, even when we're learning a foreign language. Productive language is going to begin with the babbling stage, and that's just the spontaneous uttering of sounds. What's cool about infants is that the babbling stage contains sounds needed to speak any language on the planet. And so, a babbling infant, you can't disseminate um, which culture or which country an infant belongs to by listening to the babbling. It all sounds the same. And then what happens at around 10 months of age, you or infants begin to recognize the language that is spoken in their home or in their culture. Um, and then around 1 year of age, we will advance to the one word stage of language in which we understand words and their meaning, but we're usually only using one or a single word to convey a message. Um, Tone is very important in the one word stage, right? And any of you that have been around infants know that, right? Um, the tone of how the word is said can convey whether or not doggy is being spoken with excitement, doggy, or if it's with apprehension, doggy, or if it's an inquisitive, doggy, as a child points to a squirrel and says, "Doggy." So the one word stage is, communication is still occurring, albeit simple. The two word stage, or telegraphic speech, usually happens around, um, 18 months to 2 years of age. It's different for every child. Um, but it's called telegraphic speech because it's like an old school telegram, like as few words as possible being sent across the wire. And so know that telegraphic speech, or two word stage, is mostly nouns and verbs, right? Want juice, want cookie. Um, the rules of the native language, though, amazingly are still there, and that syntax is usually still followed, and that you will have, European babies putting their adjectives after their nouns, while you have the American babies putting their adjectives prior to their nouns. Blue ball versus ball blue in other languages outside of English. Um, I don't know if you can hear in the background my own toddler. She is well beyond that two-word stage as she's blabbering as I try to make this video for you. I thought the iPad would keep her quiet, but it's not working. Anyways, let's explain language, right? What are the different theories on how this language develops? You remember our friend B.F. Skinner from Unit 6, right? That is the learning theorist, right? Superstitious pigeons from your 40 studies reading. He's going to say that, look, language development happens as a result of behaviorist theories: associative learning, imitation of what it is you're seeing, reinforcement of behavior. And that during that, babbling stage, when sounds started being put together, even if it was accidentally, and it started to sound like a word, parents started praising that infant, like, the baby just said mama, when really it's just that they liked mama, mama, repeating that sound to get a feel for how to do it. Yeah, we praise and clap and smile, and the kid picks up on that, and so they'll tend to repeat the things that are well received. Um, and so Skinner would have said it's purely a reaction to environmental um, stimulation that make you learn language. Linguist Noam Chomsky thinks otherwise, though. He kind of looked at this language explosion that occurs in toddlerdom or toddlerhood and thought this is way too huge, or exponential of growth to be attributed simply to, operant conditioning at work. And so, um, because of those extraordinary, leaps and bounds in language, um, we tend to have his theory be more of a biological explanation rather than an environmental explanation. And so, a couple of things associated with Chomsky that you should familiarize yourself with. He would say that we all came pre-wired with a language acquisition device, and that is just this basic understanding of, um, or I guess preference for language, and that the more an infant was exposed to language, it like turned these switches on in the brain, and the infant just knew that this was something important to learn, more so than other things. Um, and so this language acquisition device would explain why, as a toddler, like, I can teach Charlotte words, but she can come up with new sentences and new ways of using those words, sentences that she didn't necessarily have to hear, an adult say. And so the fact that she can actually make her own productive sentences would be an explanation of this. He also said that you probably came programmed with a universal grammar that underlies all speech. And so, even though languages might differ slightly from one another, all languages contain verbs, subjects and objects to sentences, questions ending in an up or higher tone, and This seems evidenced, according to Chomsky, by the fact that most babies, regardless of what language they're taught, tend to learn nouns first. Um, and that being, kind of describing your world in terms of things and then getting the details about those things in due time. One other good example of this universal grammar and this language acquisition device would be in how toddlers often over apply or over generalize the rules of grammar, which would show that they have the ability to take what's said in the environment and put it to use in new language situations, which Chomsky would say Skinner's idea can't explain. And so, a great example of this was oftentimes when I come home from school, it's confession time for Charlotte. She will confess any sins that have happened while I was gone teaching the big kids. And the other day, she and Dan went to the bouncy house place, right? Pump it up, right? Woohoo! We get to bounce around on things. Well, apparently there was another little girl there that was younger than Charlotte that was playing with a blue ball that Charlotte wanted to play with. And so instead of asking nicely for the blue ball, she took it away from the girl. Of course, was reprimanded by my husband and confessed to the sin upon my arrival home from school. But the way that she said it was that, Mama, we went to the bouncy house today, but I was bad. I taked the blue ball from the little girl. And so the fact that, she taked the ball instead of I took the ball, as I was, trying to maintain a stern face of, whoa, we shouldn't do that and we should share. In my mind, I'm thinking, oh, yay, an example of Chomsky and overgeneralization of grammar. I'm making that video in a couple of days for AP Psych. Perfect. So I guess we can all at least monopolize on the adventures of me having a toddler. Lots of good examples for class. Um, let's see, then the only other thing listed here on the slide are critical periods, which would just be um, young, like a time period that an infant or a child is best suited to learn a behavior. And we know that language has this kind of window of prime opportunity, that young brains tend to soak up language better than older brains. So the fact that you are maybe taking a foreign language in middle school or high school, probably a much more difficult task than if you had been taught a language at a younger age. The earlier an individual learns a language, the better they are at using it and retaining it for the long term. It doesn't mean that you couldn't become fluent in another language as an adult. It's just more difficult to do. There was a study mentioned in the reading about Korean immigrants that had been tested on, English grammar rules, and it really didn't matter how long they'd lived in the United States. Everybody in the study had, emigrated out of, from Korea to the United States, um, and had been here a minimum of 10 years. But the key was not how long they'd lived here, but the age they were when they came to the United States and started acquiring the English language. That the younger they were when they learned it, the better they did on the grammar test at recognizing grammatically incorrect sentences that were written in English. And so it's not impossible to learn a language at a younger age, but the critical period for language development is, 5 and younger tends to be the general rule. Okay. That is good for language development. On language, we're going to talk about thinking in language in your final video installment. Stay tuned for that later.